The scream echoed through the dim apartment as Emily said, "Please, stop this, Daniel." Her voice cracked, and little Sophie clung tightly to her chest. The walls seemed to close in, trapping them in a moment of unbearable weight. Daniel's face twisted in anger, his breath sharp as he shouted, "You think you can keep her from me?" His words sliced through the silence, leaving a trail of venom behind. The sound of his boots across the wooden floor was like a drum beat of fury. Emily's heart pounded, her arms trembling as she tightened her hold on Sophie. The child whimpered, burying her face in her mother's shoulder, whispering, "Mommy, don't let him take me." Emily's tears blurred her vision, but she stood her ground, her voice shaking. "You've already abandoned us once, Daniel. You won't do it again." His hand gripped the doorframe, knuckles white with rage, before he stormed out and slammed the door, so hard the windows rattled. A deafening silence followed, pierced only by distant sirens. Emily collapsed to her knees, Sophie still in her arms, the reality sinking in like ice. In that moment, Emily knew her life would never be the same, and the fight for her child's future had just begun. Emily sat on the floor, arms locked around Sophie as if letting go would mean losing everything. Sophie whispered, "Mommy, why does Daddy hate us?" Emily kissed her daughter's hair and said, "He doesn't hate you, sweet girl. He just doesn't understand love the way you do." The room felt like a battlefield after war, silence heavier than the screams that came before. Emily's breath shook, and her eyes traced the cracks in the ceiling, wondering how much more weight it could hold, how much more she could endure. Sophie's small hands brushed Emily's face, wiping away tears, and she whispered, "I'll protect you too, Mommy." Emily's heart broke and healed in the same moment. She held Sophie tighter, vowing silently that no matter what storm came next, they would face it together. Emily placed Sophie gently on the couch, tucking a worn blanket around her. "Close your eyes, sweetheart," she whispered. Sophie clung to her hand, eyes heavy with tears. "Will he come back?" Emily forced a soft smile. "Not tonight, my love." The lamp flickered, shadows moving across the room like restless ghosts. Emily sat beside Sophie, stroking her hair, the rhythm calming them both. Outside, sirens faded into the distance, leaving an aching quiet. Sophie's breath slowed, her small frame finally giving into exhaustion. Emily watched her daughter sleep, her chest rising and falling, and thought, "She's the reason I can't break." The weight of the world pressed against her, but in Sophie's peace, she found enough strength to face the darkness again. The night stretched endlessly, each tick of the clock like a reminder of her unraveling world. Emily paced the room, whispering, "What am I supposed to do now?" The silence offered no answers. She touched the cold window, staring into the dark street below. Shadows of strangers passed, free of her burdens. Emily thought of the years spent fighting alone, every job, every sacrifice, every tear hidden from Sophie. She clenched her fist against the glass, promising herself, "I won't let him take her from me. Not ever." Her reflection in the window stared back at her, broken but defiant. The storm inside her was stronger than the quiet outside. She turned, looking at Sophie's sleeping form, and knew the fight had only begun. The first rays of dawn crept into the apartment, turning shadows into pale light. Emily hadn't slept. She sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands. A cold cup of coffee rested beside her, untouched. Sophie stirred on the couch, her small voice calling, "Mommy." Emily forced a smile, walking over. "I'm here, sweetheart." Sophie wrapped her arms around Emily's waist, whispering, "Don't be sad." Emily knelt, cupping Sophie's face, and said, "I'm not sad, love. I'm just tired, but I'll always be strong for you." In that fragile morning glow, the promise was sealed. The fight was just beginning, but for now, mother and daughter stood as one against the storm. The next morning, Emily walked Sophie to school, her hand gripping tightly to the small palm that anchored her to reality. Sophie asked softly, "Mommy, will you pick me up today?" Emily forced a smile, replying, "Of course, sweetheart, I'll always be here." The street felt longer than usual, lined with weary faces, heading into their own storms. Emily's chest tightened as she thought of the bills waiting on the table, the job she could not afford to lose, and the shadow of Daniel's rage lurking in every step. Sophie looked up with a hopeful smile, her innocence like a fragile light against the heaviness pressing down. Emily bent to hug her before the school gate, whispering, "Be brave for me today." As Sophie disappeared into the crowd of children, Emily stood frozen, staring after her. Her heart screamed to shield her forever, but life demanded sacrifices. She turned, her breath shaky, and began the long walk toward the bus stop, the weight of survival pressing on her shoulders. Emily sat at her office desk, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing above her. She glanced at the clock, each tick echoing louder than her thoughts. Her boss, Mr. Thompson, walked past, his eyes sharp, and said, "You're late again, Emily." She stammered, "I'm sorry, sir, it won't happen again." His voice cut like a blade, "Excuses don't keep this company running." Emily's chest burned with shame, her fists clenched under the desk. She thought of Sophie waiting after school, and prayed the day would not end with another disaster. Papers piled higher on her desk, the weight of expectations as heavy as the fear of losing her job. She whispered under her breath, "Just hold on. Just one more day." The office air felt cold, sterile, and unwelcoming, but Emily stayed rooted, because failure was not an option. Lunch break offered no relief. Emily sat outside on a worn bench, unwrapping a sandwich she could barely taste. Her best friend Claire appeared, holding coffee, and said, "You look like hell, Mum." Emily forced a laugh. "Thanks for the honesty." Claire's eyes softened as she sat down, brushing her hair back. "You can't keep carrying this alone," Claire said gently. Emily shook her head. "I have to. Sophie depends on me." Claire reached for her hand, squeezing firmly. "Then let me help. You don't have to fight every battle by yourself." Emily's chest ached as tears threatened, but she swallowed them down. She whispered, "If I fall apart, Sophie falls apart." Claire squeezed harder, her loyalty unspoken but solid. In that brief moment, Emily felt a flicker of strength, knowing at least one person stood in her corner. The workday dragged like a chain across her body. Emily watched the clock until it was time to leave, her heart racing to see Sophie again. As she hurried to the school, raindrops began to fall, smearing her vision. She found Sophie waiting by the gate, alone, small backpack clutched tightly. Sophie's eyes lit up. "Mommy." Emily crouched, arms open wide. Sophie ran into her embrace, and Emily whispered, "I'm sorry I'm late, love." Sophie shook her head, smiling. "You came. That's all that matters." The rain soaked their clothes, but Emily held her daughter close, the storm outside no match for the warmth in Sophie's words. For the first time that day, Emily felt she could breathe again. That night, Emily sat at the kitchen table, bills spread across the surface like an army closing in. Sophie worked on her homework at the counter, humming softly. Emily whispered, "How am I supposed to keep us afloat?" Numbers blurred, red warnings screaming from every page. Sophie looked up. "Mommy, are you okay?" Emily forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Just working hard, that's all." Sophie beamed proudly. "One day I'll help you." Emily's chest tightened at her daughter's innocence, but she nodded. "You already do, Sophie. You're my reason for everything." She stacked the bills in a pile, burying her fear under resolve. Tonight was another battle survived, and tomorrow would be another war to fight. Emily sat in the lawyer's office, her palms sweating against the polished wooden table. Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses and said, "Daniel has filed for partial custody." Emily's chest tightened, her voice breaking. "He walked away from us years ago. How can he demand this now?" Mr. Harris replied calmly, "The court will consider his claims regardless of his past. You'll need to prepare for a fight." Emily's eyes burned, fury tangled with fear. She whispered, "He doesn't want her because he loves her. He wants her to hurt me." Mr. Harris nodded grimly. "Then we'll make sure the court sees the truth." The room felt suffocating, every word like a sentence on her heart. Emily thought of Sophie's smile, fragile and innocent, and clenched her fists. She whispered fiercely, "I'll fight with everything I have. She is my world, and no one will take her away." That evening, Emily returned home, exhaustion pressing down like lead. Sophie rushed into her arms, her small voice asking, "Why do you look so sad, Mommy?" Emily forced a smile, stroking her daughter's hair. "I'm just tired, love. But I'm here with you now." Sophie tilted her head, eyes wide with worry. "Is Daddy coming back?" Emily froze, her heart trembling. She whispered, "He might try, but you don't need to be scared. I'll always protect you." Sophie hugged tighter, whispering, "I only want you, Mommy." Emily's throat ached as she whispered back, "And you'll always have me." In that embrace, the storm of the day faded slightly, though the shadows of tomorrow loomed larger than ever. The following morning, Emily sat at work, her eyes scanning an email that made her stomach sink. Mr. Thompson stood over her shoulder, his voice sharp. "Your performance has slipped, Emily. If this continues, you'll be replaced." Emily turned, panic rising. "Please, I'm doing everything I can." He cut her off coldly. "Effort doesn't keep this company profitable." Her hands trembled on the keyboard, thoughts racing to Sophie. Losing this job meant losing everything. Emily swallowed her pride, whispering, "I'll do better, sir. I promise." His gaze lingered before he walked away, leaving her trembling. She clenched her jaw, whispering under her breath, "You can break me, but you won't break my fight." That night, Emily met Claire at a quiet cafe. The smell of coffee thick in the air. Claire leaned forward, concern etched in her face. "Em, you can't keep pushing yourself to the edge like this." Emily stirred her cup, her voice trembling. "I don't have a choice. Sophie depends on me. If I fall, everything falls." Claire's eyes softened. "Then let me help. You don't need to carry this alone." Emily shook her head. "I don't want to be a burden." Claire gripped her hand across the table. "You're not a burden. You're my friend, and friends fight for each other." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled faintly. For the first time in days, she felt less alone. Later that night, Emily tucked Sophie into bed. The child looked up, whispering, "Will everything be okay?" Emily kissed her forehead gently, whispering back, "Yes, love. I'll make sure of it." Sophie smiled faintly, clutching her blanket. As Emily stood at the door, she whispered to herself, "Even if I have to tear my world apart, I'll keep you safe." The apartment felt heavy, but within that fragile promise lay her strength. She switched off the light, the glow fading into darkness, but her resolve burned brighter than ever. Emily's phone buzzed late at night as she sat at the kitchen table. The message froze her blood. "Claire has been speaking with Daniel." Her breath caught, whispering, "No, not her." She clutched the phone, rereading the words until they blurred. Sophie stirred in her sleep nearby, her soft voice calling out, "Mommy?" Emily whispered back, "It's okay, sweetheart, go back to sleep." The betrayal stung sharper than any wound Daniel had left. Claire, the one person she trusted, meeting the man who shattered her world. Emily whispered through clenched teeth, "Why would you do this?" Her reflection in the window stared back, eyes hollow with fear. She realized that trust, the last thread holding her up, was tearing apart. The next day, Emily confronted Claire at the cafe where they always met. Her voice trembled. "Why didn't you tell me you saw Daniel?" Claire's face tightened, her blonde hair catching the sunlight. She replied, "He reached out. He said he just wanted to talk." Emily's chest burned, anger spilling out. "He doesn't want to talk, Claire. He wants to destroy me." Claire whispered, "I thought maybe he'd changed." Emily's voice shook. "Changed? He abandoned us. You chose him over me." Silence sat between them like a wall too high to climb. Claire reached out, but Emily pulled away, her eyes filled with hurt. At home that evening, Emily sat alone, staring at a photo of Sophie as a baby. Memories of Daniel walking out crashed over her like waves. She whispered to herself, "Every choice I made was to protect her." Sophie padded into the room, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mommy, are you crying?" Emily wiped her face quickly, forcing a smile. "No, love. Just remembering when you were small." Sophie climbed into her lap, wrapping her arms around Emily's neck. Emily closed her eyes, inhaling her daughter's warmth. In that moment, the betrayal, the custody threats, the fear, all of it dimmed under the light of Sophie's love. The following week, Emily's lawyer called with urgent news. Daniel's claiming you're unfit due to financial instability. Her chest tightened. Unfit? I've given Sophie everything I have. Mr. Harris said sternly. We'll fight this, but it won't be easy. Emily hung up, shaking, and whispered, He'll twist anything to break me. Sophie skipped into the room, holding a drawing. Look, Mommy, it's us together. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she knelt, hugging Sophie tightly. That's beautiful, love. Don't ever forget. We're a team. The drawing felt like armor, fragile but strong enough to remind her why she had to keep going. Late at night, Emily sat by the window, staring into the rain-slicked street. The betrayal by Claire still tore at her chest, but Daniel's looming shadow hurt more. She whispered to the empty room, He'll never take her from me. Sophie's soft breathing echoed from the couch, a lullaby stronger than her fears. Emily clenched her fists, her jaw tight. She thought of the courtroom ahead, the lies, the battles, the scars waiting to be made. Yet beneath the storm, her resolve glowed steady. She whispered, I may be broken, but I will not bow. Emily opened the door to an unexpected knock and froze. Standing before her was Margaret, the aunt she hadn't seen in over 15 years. Emily's voice faltered. Why are you here? Margaret's gray eyes softened. Because you need me. Emily shook her head, anger mixing with disbelief. You left me when I needed you most. Margaret's voice cracked. I never stopped watching. I stayed away because of your mother, but now, I can't stand by while Daniel tears you apart. Emily's chest heaved, memories of abandonment clawing at her. Sophie peeked from behind her, eyes wide. Mommy, who is she? Emily whispered, She's family. For the first time in years, the word felt like both a wound and a lifeline. Inside, the air was heavy with silence as Margaret sat at the kitchen table. Emily crossed her arms, voice sharp. On Sunday. You don't get to walk back in now like nothing happened. Margaret nodded, her tone steady. You're right, I failed you. But I can help you now. Emily's fists tightened. Help? Daniel is destroying everything. What could you possibly do? Margaret leaned forward, whispering, Because I know secrets about him, things he never wanted revealed. Emily's heart skipped, suspicion warring with curiosity. Sophie, coloring at the counter, looked up. She seems nice, Mommy. Emily swallowed hard, torn between trust and fear. Margaret slid a worn envelope across the table. Daniel has debts, dangerous ones. If the court knew, it would destroy his credibility. Emily's breath caught, her fingers trembling as she touched the envelope. Why didn't you come forward before? Margaret sighed. Because you never wanted to hear from me. I thought staying away was what you needed. Emily whispered, I needed family. Sophie glanced up from her drawing, her voice soft. Mommy, is she helping us? Emily nodded faintly, her eyes still locked on Margaret. For the first time, she felt the weight of a possible weapon against Daniel, though it came wrapped in old pain. Emily paced the room after Margaret left, clutching the envelope like a burning coal. The walls felt too close, the air too heavy. She whispered, Can I even trust her? Sophie tugged at her sleeve, holding the drawing she'd finished. It's us, Mommy. And her, too. Emily knelt, studying the picture. 3 figures holding hands under a sun. Her throat tightened as she hugged Sophie. You see hope where I only see scars, she whispered. Sophie smiled, because you always make it better. Emily kissed her forehead, gripping the envelope tighter. A choice was before her, cling to her pain or risk believing in family again. That night, Emily sat by the window, the envelope open in her lap. Photocopies of documents spilled across her knees, Daniel's debts, his lies, his failures. She whispered, This could save us. But doubt gnawed at her. Margaret's return carried secrets of its own. She stared at Sophie asleep on the couch, tiny chest rising and falling with peace, Emily longed for. "I'll fight," Emily whispered into the dark. "With truth, with everything I have. He won't win." The rain outside eased, leaving only quiet, but inside Emily's heart, a storm had only just begun. The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension as Emily took her seat beside Mr. Harris. Daniel sat across the aisle, his smug smirk cutting into her resolve. Emily's breath shook, but she whispered to herself for Sophie. Mr. Harris leaned in, murmuring, "Stay calm. Truth is our strength." The judge, stern and unreadable, called the case to order. Emily's chest tightened as Daniel's lawyer began, painting her as unstable, struggling, unfit. Each word sliced her like a blade. She clenched her fists, her jaw trembling. Sophie's photo, tucked in her purse, gave her courage. She thought, "He may twist my scars, but I'll show them my strength." Daniel took the stand, his voice dripping with practiced sincerity. "I only want what's best for Sophie," he said, glancing at the judge. Emily's stomach twisted. She wanted to scream, but she gripped the table, silent. Mr. Harris rose, asking pointed questions. "Where were you the past 6 years? Why return now?" Daniel's jaw tightened, his answers slippery, but cracks showed. Emily watched, her anger rising. She thought, "He abandoned us, and now he pretends to be the savior." Her heart pounded as the truth edged closer, ready to break free. Emily's turn came. She stood, heart hammering, and took the oath. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied as she spoke. "I raised Sophie alone. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every job I held, it was for her." Tears glistened, but her tone sharpened. "Daniel left us when she needed him most. Now he wants to take her, not out of love, but out of pride." The courtroom was silent. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his mask slipping. Emily clutched the stand, her chest burning with truth. She whispered to herself, "This is my fight, and I won't back down." Mr. Harris rose, presenting Margaret's documents. "Your Honor, these records show Daniel's debts, his dealings, his recklessness." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Daniel's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. Emily's eyes flicked to Margaret, sitting quietly in the gallery, her silver hair catching the light. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Emily felt her aunt's presence as a shield. Daniel's face flushed, his confidence cracking. He shouted, "This is irrelevant." The judge silenced him with a gavel. Emily exhaled, her trembling body finally finding ground. The truth was out, and it was heavier than Daniel's lies. The climax burned like fire. The judge's gavel echoed, silencing the chaos. He spoke firmly. "This court acknowledges Daniel's failures and Emily's sacrifices. Custody will remain with the mother." Emily gasped, tears streaming freely. Sophie's face filled her mind, the little girl she had fought for with every ounce of strength. Daniel slumped back, his arrogance shattered, but Emily didn't gloat. She whispered, "It's over." The courtroom blurred as she closed her eyes, her body shaking with relief. Victory tasted like salt and sorrow, but above all, it tasted like freedom. The sun had set when Emily returned home, Sophie holding her hand tightly. The weight of the trial still pressed on her chest, but Sophie's laughter filled the air, washing away shadows. "We're free now, Mommy," Sophie whispered. Emily smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Yes, love, we're finally free." The apartment felt different tonight, lighter, as though the walls themselves exhaled relief. Emily collapsed onto the couch, pulling Sophie onto her lap. Sophie asked softly, "Does this mean we'll never have to be scared again?" Emily kissed her forehead, whispering, "I'll protect you, always. That will never change." Later that night, Emily sat at the kitchen table, papers scattered before her. Bills, legal notes, reminders of a war just fought. She traced the edge of a document, her voice low. "We survived, but the scars will stay." Margaret appeared in the doorway, her silver hair catching the faint light. "Scars don't make you weaker," she said. "They remind you that you endured." Emily looked up, tears threatening, and whispered, Why come back now after so long? Margaret's voice softened. Because I couldn't watch you carry this alone anymore. Emily stared at her aunt, torn between anger and gratitude, and said, Then stay this time. Sophie wandered into the room with her blanket, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Mommy, can Aunt Margaret stay? Emily froze, her heart caught between past pain and Sophie's innocent hope. Margaret knelt, her voice warm. Only if you want me to, little one. Sophie wrapped her arms around both of them, whispering, We can be a family. Emily's eyes burned as she hugged her daughter, whispering, You already are my family. Margaret's hand touched Emily's shoulder gently, a silent promise of presence. For the first time, Emily felt a fragile thread of healing weaving through the brokenness. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the cracked blinds, painting the apartment gold. Emily brewed coffee while Sophie ate cereal at the table, humming to herself. Margaret sat quietly, sipping tea, her presence oddly comforting. Emily glanced at Sophie, who smiled brightly. The day feels new, Sophie said, spoon clinking in her bowl. Emily smiled softly. It does, love. It feels like we're starting over. Margaret added quietly, And this time you won't be alone. Emily breathed deeply, letting the warmth of that moment sink in. For once, the air carried hope instead of fear. That evening, Emily stood by Sophie's bedroom door, her hand resting on the frame. Sophie lay asleep, soft breaths filling the quiet. Emily whispered, We're stronger now. We'll never stop fighting. A true smile spread across her face, not the mask she had worn for years. Margaret's voice drifted from the kitchen, calling softly. Emily? She whispered back, coming. The apartment was silent, except for the sound of Sophie's dreams. Emily placed her hand on her daughter's door once more, a promise sealed in quiet devotion. She knew the road ahead was still uncertain, but tonight she felt unbreakable.